Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hi there, welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast. I've just got back from New York today. I was over for Consensus. I didn't go to the conference itself because I was doing interviews every day, but I did get to meet up with a bunch of people I've spoke to on Twitter before, which was pretty cool. I'm pretty jet lagged though, so I'm going to keep this intro as short as possible. Firstly, I do want to say a big thank you for all the feedback I received for my interview last week with Roger Ver. I know it was a little bit controversial for some people, but it was really good to get feedback from people, the DMs I received, the comments on YouTube. Overwhelmingly, I think it was positive, with naturally some negative ones. To balance it, this week, I've got an interview with Chief Strategy Officer from Blockstream, Samson Mow. Most of you will have heard of him. He sat opposite Roger at the Economy conference where they debated scaling. So I thought this would be a good counterbalance for the interview with Roger. Did a bunch of research. I've been looking at Lightning Network. It takes a bit of time for me to get my head around these things, and I probably don't fully understand it. I also interviewed Jameson when I was in New York to discuss it further, but there are things I'm starting to get my head around. I have kind of on a personal level come to the conclusion that we do need off-chain scaling options. On-chain alone won't work. That was something Roger actually agreed with in the interview that I did with him. So I have been taking a look at Lightning Network, and it does seem exciting, but I do have a few things I'm not sure about, and I cover these with Samson. Firstly, and my main issue, is that if Lightning is successful, and loads of people use it, then there is a relationship between Lightning and the main chain, and when the blocks start to fill on the main chain, then the fees might go up again. And also, it feels like the main chain will need to have a fee market and higher fees actually to support miners in the long run as the blocks subsidies halve. I think it's June 2020 they're set to halve again. So there does need to be a fee market. I don't have an answer, but I am worried that because of the relationship between the two chains, that many people will be priced out of the main chain and therefore will be subject to the features of the side chains, of the second layer, which might not have all the security features of the main chain. So that's one thing I am kind of worried about. But then to flip that, I do understand the economics of this, that we do need fees for miners and we do need to be sensible with block size usage. So I can't give you a sensible answer, and you'll see and you'll hear with my interview with Samson my concerns about this. And I don't think I always articulate it very well, but hopefully you can see where I'm coming from. Secondly, the other thing from the interview that was kind of interesting for me was when Samson said about the fees originally being low, and because Bitcoin was a payment network, and obviously retailers adopted it and tried to use it, and then as the fees went up, they couldn't use it, and that's kind of their fault for not understanding it and it becoming digital gold. I felt like that was a kind of contradiction. I do feel sorry for retailers because they're not just going to stop using it, and they don't have the benefit of hindsight, and therefore they will be looking at alternative options. So yeah, I would say I'm still in this cloudy position where I'm seeing things from both sides and trying to navigate it. A couple of things I do want to do is get interviews with techies on both sides and possibly someone from Lightning Network. So I'm going to try and book those in the future. But anyway, I hope this carries the debate on a bit. I hope you appreciate the questions I put to Samson and how the conversation went. I thought it was pretty good. He explained a number of things in ways to me which kind of made sense. So yeah, I hope you enjoy that. Please do support the show. There's a number of things you can do. Firstly, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you make sure you don't miss it every week when it comes out. And if you don't mind taking 5 minutes, you can leave us a review. 5-star always helps if you think it deserves it. But yeah, please do that. You can follow me on social media. I am on Twitter, Steemit, Medium, YouTube. I'm pretty much everything. And my handle on everything is @WhatBitcoinDid. And if you try and get in touch, I do try and reply to everyone. You can use my website. My website is www.whatbitcoindid.com, and you can sign up to my newsletters. There's a training course on there as well. There's a blog. There's loads of stuff. Have a look. And lastly, you can share this out with your friends. Just ping it out onto Facebook and Twitter if you think you know some people who might like it. So on to the interview with Samson. I hope you enjoy the show. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to get in touch. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com, and I do try and respond to everyone, so feel free to get in touch. Okay, hope you enjoy the show. Hi Samson, how are you?
Hi Pete, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you for agreeing to do this. When did you get into the city?
Just last night.
Okay, and what are you looking forward to this week? What are you hoping to get from Consensus?
We have a lot of meetings planned. We have a demo in the Blockstream room. So we're just hoping to meet people, chat, and talk about some of the things we're working on. And that'll be good for us. Brilliant.
So it's very good to have this interview with you just a few days after the Roger interview because naturally I got a lot of flack. So before we get into that and trying to have an impartial and balanced counter argument to my interview with Roger, can you just introduce people to who you are and what your role is at Blockstream and a bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Samson. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Blockstream, looking after marketing, product management, and biz dev. Before Blockstream, I was at BTC China or BTCC. I was a COO there. And I was taking care of the exchange and mining business unit. So we were one of the largest exchanges and mining pools in the world. And originally, I'm from the game industry, a producer, director of production. I've made games like Dawn of War, Company of Heroes, Might and Magic franchise games, and the Smurfs.
Okay, and for the people who won't be aware of Blockstream, because not everybody is, can you explain who Blockstream are and what they do?
Sure. So Blockstream is a blockchain infrastructure company. We're mainly focused on Bitcoin technology. We do a lot of contribution to open source projects like Bitcoin. We contribute on the Lightning Network. We have Elements project. That's an open source project forked from Bitcoin where we do a lot of R&D and stuff. That's where our sidechain repo is. We also have Green Address. It's a mobile wallet, iOS and Android. It's a multi-sig wallet, so it's secure. If you lose your phone, people can't just sweep your funds off of it. You have to sign from another device as a backup. Okay. And we also have Blockstream Satellite.
Yes, I saw about that. That seemed like the coolest project of all.
That's probably the one that inspires people the most. It's like a blue sky project, right? So we have these geosynchronous satellites that we lease space on, and we broadcast Bitcoin blocks around the world. And we're coming up to full global coverage probably in a month or two.
So does that get over the Great China Firewall?
If you have a dish, then yes.
Oh, wow. And just for context, so everyone understands, Blockstream are funded by venture capital, right? To the tune, did I read right, about 151 million?
No, it's 81 million.
So Crunchbase is 151 million.
They might have gotten it wrong.
Okay. But even so, 81 million. So how does Blockstream make money? Where's the revenue channels?
So I forgot one of our projects. It's a partnership with ICE. They're the owners of the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. So we have a cryptocurrency data feed that we're working with them. So that is one of our projects that's revenue generating. We'll have a rev share on that. Okay. And then Liquid, will monetize later on. I probably forgot to introduce Liquid earlier.
Liquid, is that your sidechain project?
Yes, it's a sidechain. It's a strong federation. So it's a inter-exchange settlement network that lets people move funds quickly between exchanges and institutions.
And if you're contributing to Lightning and Bitcoin, you don't have any equity in Lightning? Or do you have equity in Lightning, or is it just a contribution? How does that actually work?
It's just a protocol that we contribute to.
Okay.
It's all open source.
It's all open source. And are you able to monetize from that?
There's different things we're thinking about. There could be some hardware plays that we're exploring, but right now it's still a very early stage to think about monetizing.
So you're building out the infrastructure of the company and working alongside the other teams that are developing the protocols with future plans to monetize. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's a great introduction. So just to give you an introduction to my audience, so you know the type of people we're talking to and my background, I'm 18 months into crypto, although first exposed about 4 years ago. And when I came in the space, found it very difficult to find useful information from people who don't have a technical background and impartial information. So what I try to do is
go and meet the key people, but have conversations that maybe those who don't have a technical background can understand, who maybe are intimidated to getting involved in Reddit and just want to understand where they should invest and shouldn't invest, because, we do have people whose first exposure may be something like Coinbase. They're introduced to 4 coins, 4 tokens, and they won't know which to buy and why. So that's an introduction to my audience. So also I mentioned I'm going to try and be as impartial as possible and ask probably questions that people would want me to ask you from the big block side, as I asked to Roger from the other side. So I'm going to be as impartial as possible, but I'm not going to cover certain things which I don't think are so important. So
sounds good.
So to begin with, just on a personal level, I was listening to an interview with Adam on the way, and it's a very old Epicenter one. I think it was like episode 95. Interestingly, referring to it as a $4 billion network. But they asked him, what is Bitcoin? And I think it would be quite interesting just to ask you the same question. What is Bitcoin to you?
I think I like to answer Bitcoin is digital gold, just because it resonates with the vast majority of the population. It's easier for people to conceptualize and really understand what that means. But it's really a lot more than that. To go into it, you kind of need to spend a lot of time, because it is essentially information that we ascribe value to now. And that is a big game changer, because we've never been able to do that in human history before, where we take information and transact it as if it were money.
Okay, so digital gold, therefore, store of wealth.
Yes.
And so do you therefore not see Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, or do you see that it is both?
I think it is going to be everything that money is. So money is a store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account. And I think Bitcoin will be all of those things, and it's advancing along this path simultaneously. So traditionally, with assets like precious metals that we used as money in the past, it first starts out as a store of value, right? It's actually before that, it's a collectible item. People collect it because it's cool, and then they discover that it has the unique properties or interesting attributes, right? Like gold doesn't tarnish, and it's easy to melt down and reform and whatnot. So eventually, it becomes a store of value because people think it's valuable. And then it's a medium of exchange. They start transacting in it because they know that I can trade this for products and services. And then eventually it'll become like a coin, and you can use it as a unit of account. But Bitcoin right now, it's pretty much a store of value. And some people say it's not, but that's just due to volatility. But we're watching the evolution of this digital money like over a period of a decade. And for the precious metal store value currencies and monies, those evolved over hundreds and thousands of years, right? So Bitcoin will be volatile in the meantime, but it is a store of value because over a long enough time frame, it's storing your value. It doesn't really go down.
Well, quite interestingly, so I mentioned to you before we started, I interviewed a journalist called Alejandro from Venezuela earlier this year. And when Bitcoin dropped from 20,000 to 5,000, for 5,800, because of the rate of inflation in Venezuela, if you held Bitcoin, your value in the Venezuelan bolivar went up. So I think it's from a perspective, it's a store of value. And also, would you agree, I don't know if you think about this, but for a store of value doesn't always mean it has to go up in value. So it's holding.
That's just a bonus.
Yeah, it's just a bonus. And actually, if you look at gold's volatile just over a much longer time frame.
Yes.
Okay, so
I have a bit more.
Yeah, so
Bitcoin, back when it was starting out, it was a medium of exchange, right? Because it was very cheap to transact because no one was using it. But as anything matures, there will be a cost to transact. So Bitcoin, when the fees were very high last year, that was a bad medium of exchange because it's very expensive to transact. But traditionally, Bitcoin also is slow to transact too because there are 10-minute block times. The interesting thing now with Bitcoin, this is why I'm saying it's evolving on 3 paths simultaneously, is it's also going to become a unit of account at the Satoshi level by transactions over the Lightning Network. So that's why Bitcoin is very unique. Because it's information that we can transact as money, it can evolve along these 3 paths simultaneously. And as Lightning Network grows and develops, it'll also become a medium of exchange too.
Okay. And in terms of this is an important question because of obviously a certain tweet I read that you put out. Who do you believe Bitcoin is for?
I think Bitcoin is for everyone in the world.
And it can be for everybody?
Yes.
At any level of income?
I think so.
Okay. So, and my last question before we start talking about the bigger issues, what do you think it's going to take for Bitcoin to become usable and people will want to use it instead of fiat? So at the moment, it's essentially a collectible around people I know where I live. No one's really spending it. Mm-hmm. My only use case for spending it is buying mining gear and paying my mining costs because it's international, so it's quick and easy. What do you believe will take to transition Bitcoin to be something that many people will use on a daily basis instead of fiat?
I think the key to that is a circular economy. So you have to be able to earn it and spend it. Because if you're earning fiat and you need to convert it, that's a really big barrier for most people, right? You don't want to earn in fiat and then exchange it at a cost. Because if you're buying on an exchange, you're paying the exchange to change your money, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have to do that, then it's really not conductive to spending, right? You have to top up all the time and go and exchange and spend it, right? But if you have a circular economy where you're earning Bitcoin, that means it's much easier to spend it because you don't need to hold the Bitcoin. Let's say you have a service selling coffees, right? Then you're earning Bitcoin, and that evening you'll go and spend Bitcoin to go and watch a movie or something like that. Okay. So the key to that circular economy is to remove friction in spending Bitcoin and using Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was a horrible way for people that are not really interested in tinkering around to collect money, to earn money, because you do have to wait for confirmations. Like it takes a minute to confirm in a block, and it's not always 10 minutes, right? It can be highly variable.
6 hours.
It could be, depending on the network. Mm-hmm. And then the fees are unpredictable too. Mm-hmm. So I think Lightning will be the key to establishing that circular economy where people can earn easily and spend easily because the fees are going to be negligible.
So that's very interesting. I've never actually heard anyone put it that way, but funnily enough, that's exactly what happens with my mining. I get paid in Bitcoin, mm-hmm. and it's just much easier to pay in Bitcoin. I guess that's going to first happen for people who have probably small independent businesses, small independent online businesses, because we're probably a long way away from large companies paying their staff in Bitcoin.
That's a good question. I think a lot of large companies did look at Bitcoin as a way to earn money, like accepting Bitcoin as payment. But then they discovered that there are drawbacks, right? Mm-hmm. Fees are unpredictable. They can be gamed. And also the confirmation times are highly variable. But if you have Lightning, if some of these guys that are still accepting Bitcoin make the switch over to Lightning, let's say a major payment point of sale terminal integrated, then that would be a big game changer, right?
Yeah.
I think if it happens, it's going to happen very quickly. People will just make a switch, and you'll see this ability to earn and pay, right? If they're able to earn, they should be able to pay their employees in Bitcoin, right?
Okay, interesting. Okay, so what I want to move on now is talk about the scaling issues that have been plaguing Bitcoin probably for 2.5 years now. Mm-hmm. Seems to be a never ending. I'm going to try and be as impartial as possible. One thing, my experience going through this now is it feels the whole thing's actually quite embarrassing. Do you get that feeling at all that it's kind of embarrassing for Bitcoin to be going through this and this kind of tit-for-tat war?
Well, because it's open source and, yes, to answer your question, yes, it is embarrassing. Ideally, we wouldn't have it, but it's kind of also inevitable that we will have it because the scaling is kind of a bike shed, right? Everyone can have an opinion on scaling. Everyone can have a thought of how big the block should be or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's easy to pick a number, right? Should it be 1, 2, 4, 32, right? It's this really amorphous thing that is not really practical to needle on, right? Mm-hmm. Because if we want to scale Bitcoin, we don't want to gain 1% scale. We want thousands of percent in scale. And no matter how big you make the blocks, you'll never achieve thousands percent scale. That's why we need Lightning, right? Mm-hmm. You need orders of magnitudes more scale. So if it just got stuck on the block size. I think it was Gavin Andreessen that said, we should increase the blocks. Because if you ignore consensus rules and you ignore, the difficulty of getting consensus, then technically on paper, it's easy to make this thing from 1 to 2, to increase it like that. But we actually don't have a good way to increase it without causing a split. And that's what it comes down to. So I think the scaling debate overall was just a very big waste of time.
So for people who don't understand consensus rules, could you explain that?
So Bitcoin is just software. And the software has many rules in it. So there is the 1 megabyte block size. There's the block times, roughly 10 minutes. Block reward, it was 50, then 25, and then 12 and a half. Mm-hmm. Even in mining, there is a consensus rule where you cannot spend coins until after 100 confirmations.
Yeah.
But
100 blocks.
Yeah, 100 blocks.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of these rules where you can't really change any of them unless it's done through a soft fork, which doesn't require everyone to upgrade at the same time. So if you just want to change one, the probably more contentious one would be, the easily contentious one would be the number of Bitcoin in existence, right? 21 million Bitcoin. So if you wanted to double that, no one would agree, right? But it's the same principle for every other rule. You still need everyone's consensus to change that rule. And just like the 21 million Bitcoin cap, you cannot change the block size without everyone agreeing.
And rules are submitted through a BIP?
Yes. So, BIPs are just to improve Bitcoin in some way. Mm-hmm. But say you wanted to propose a consensus rule change, you would submit it through a BIP. And
who gets to vote on the decisions?
Generally, it's just the developers discussing it and then giving an ACK or a NACK if it's a good idea or a bad idea. So it's like a technical meritocracy.
Okay. And how... So if there was the desire to increase the block size, who are the people actually who come together to make that decision?
Generally, it's the core developers, and they'll reach out to other people too to kind of solicit feedback. And it's kind of a process of seeking consensus or rough consensus, which is finding something that more or less everyone can agree that's not bad.
Okay. So when I went out to interview Roger and wanted to see another side of the debate, there was an awful lot of quite abusive trolling and comments coming back saying that I shouldn't be providing a platform to a scammer and a fraud. Mm-hmm. And similar had the same with Craig Wright. And adding to that, we also had a Vitalik at Deconomy right in front of you saying, should Craig Wright be here? What do you think of people... I separate Craig and Roger because I don't see Roger so much as a fraud. I just see him doing things that just piss people off. What do you think of people saying we shouldn't be given a platform to these people?
In an ideal world, there would be no platform for scammers and fraudsters. Mm-hmm. But they'll find their own platform. So I skimmed through some of your other podcasts, and I think you try to present an even view on things. So I think it's a good thing what you're doing to kind of drill into it and find some facts or truths in things, right? Mm-hmm. But no matter what, they're going to find their own platform. Mm-hmm. They'll weasel their way into some stage or conference and give their sermon.
So, do you believe that Bitcoin Cash therefore is a scam and not just a fork?
The coin itself is not a scam, but the way that it's being marketed by the people supporting it is definitely a scam. They're deliberately trying to confuse people to think that it's Bitcoin. with every single underhanded tactic in the book. So I would say, the marketing of Bcash is a scam.
I actually think those efforts, though, are counterproductive.
They are.
I think they would be more successful if they did. I said this to Roger. I said, I think if you presented an even, unbiased view of the both coins, pros and cons, you would probably be more successful, because what you are doing is you are turning yourself into the enemy and creating reasons for people not to like you. So, okay.
Well, I would go further with that. If they really wanted to make Bcash, none of them should even be in the spotlight. They should just launch it and then don't even talk about it. And then they would actually probably be decently successful.
Well, it has use cases. It has certain use cases over Bitcoin at present.
No, I don't think so. What's the difference between Bcash and Litecoin and Dogecoin?
Well, okay. Well, that's a slightly different point. I'm talking about between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. I think there is I've looked at Ryan X. Charles, what he's done with yours.org, and I've looked at Brian Hoffman, and I've seen a definite issue with e-commerce retailers wanting to accept Bitcoin, in that it's just not practical on a number of levels. Therefore, there is a opportunity for Bitcoin Cash.
But isn't Litecoin just as good?
Okay, well, I would ignore Dogecoin at the moment.
Okay.
I'd set one separately because I just think it's a meme coin, and it's essentially a pump and dump coin for traders, and it's super volatile and doesn't really.
Okay.
It's a joke.
Well, we can take Dogecoin off the table.
In terms of Litecoin, not a lot of difference.
Block times are faster.
Block times are faster, but Litecoin is very much aligned to Bitcoin. And there are fair arguments to say that Charlie Lee's position of placing Litecoin almost as your checking account and Bitcoin as your savings account has been great for Litecoin. And I can understand that maybe the Bitcoin Cash people don't want to align themselves with that anyway. It's not like that. I don't see them going, okay, we'll all go and work for Litecoin. I think they fundamentally believe what they're doing is right, and they fundamentally believe they should be able to use the Bitcoin brand. I don't agree with it, but that's why I think they're doing it. So I think they have a use case. Okay, before we get onto that,
but you still haven't answered the question.
So
right?
what has it got over Bitcoin?
If you just want something for payments,
yeah,
then you could use Litecoin.
Yeah, and if I just wanted to drive my kids to school, I can use a BMW or a Mercedes. It's the open nature of competition. One of my things I found with Roger, I also think he's a very competitive businessman. I think he wants to win. I think he fundamentally believes he's right, but I think he's a businessman as well. And I think he thinks he can do a better job than Litecoin. And I think that's one of the things. I don't think there's a huge amount of differences, but I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between a BMW and Mercedes and this just comes down to business competition. One of the things that has come up quite a bit, one thing that's very hard when you're thrown into this space and you haven't been in it for 7 years and you're not technical, is every argument seems to then have a counter-argument. And then every counter-argument has another counter-argument. And it's very hard to find truths. It's really, really quite difficult. And there's certain things I've researched. So, for example, a number of the Bitcoin Cash community have said to me, if you're interviewing Samson, you've got to ask him about Blockstream's influence over Core. And I said to you before, and I'm not going to ask you because I've done my research, it's circumstantial to me. It's not a question. But one thing that does seem to happen, and I'd be interested in your perspective on it, the arguments about censorship do seem to exist. From my research, there definitely seems to be censorship on our Bitcoin. Have I got them the right way around? I always forget now because I don't use Reddit anymore because it's so toxic. Yeah. What are your views on the censorship?
Well,
do you agree it exists?
I think it's moderation, right? It is a private forum on the centralized service that some people set up, right? So if you registered our Bitcoin back in the day, then you would be moderating it, right? And if people started talking about altcoins and trying to sell things, you'd probably take those down, right? Because the topic's supposed to be about Bitcoin. So there's a line between censorship and moderation. And I think that they're conflating the two things, right? There is definitely moderation happening. They don't let you go and spam and promote your ICO or whatever.
I agree,
right? And if you're disrespectful or you're swearing or whatever, people, they're probably going to ban you, right? And I think that's reasonable because it is a forum run by some guys, right? Our BTC has its own method for moderation. Downvoting, right? So it's really one and the same. I don't think that none of this is really censorship, right? Because censorship is when you have no way at all to express your views. If you're being moderated on a forum, you can make your own forum, which he did. And if you can't open up a forum on Reddit at all, you can go and spin up your own, right? Yeah. Censorship is really like, you're being censored and you have no way to access the internet in your country or something like that. And you can't even post about something. And
I think there's different levels of censorship. And I think there's also hypocrisy in that it is a private forum, so it has its own rules, where then also Roger gets accused of misusing Bitcoin.com. And I don't like the way he does, but again, that's a private commercial domain name. So I feel like if the defense for our Bitcoin is that it's privately owned, I think Roger's probably equally within his right to use the defense of using the .com in his way, not the mis-selling of Bitcoin Cash as Bitcoin. That I did completely disagree with. But in terms of using it to push his Bitcoin Cash, I think it has the same. They're either the same or they're not. Do you understand my comparison? Yeah. I agree also on our Bitcoin that moderation of talking about altcoins and ICOs, completely agree. But it does feel like the block size is something that should and could be debated. And from my research, it seems like posts related to block size have also been removed. And to me, that does move into censorship. And I think there's different levels of censorship. You've got nationwide censorship, but I think you can have censorship in certain zones. I don't believe it's detriment to them getting the message out, but I think it personally, from my research, it feels like it's denial of people when people say there isn't censorship there.
Yeah, you could say that. I just don't think it's really censorship. And to go back to your original question, we don't support that forum at all. And I don't even post on Reddit. I had an account maybe 3 years ago and I posted once or twice. But, I don't think a lot of people from Blockstream use Reddit at all.
I'm not relating this to Blockstream. I don't use Reddit at all anymore as well. I find it hugely toxic. I find Twitter's certainly still toxic, but a better forum. Whether or not Blockstream use it, we're talking about communities. And from what I see, if we're going to criticize people, we need to make criticisms fair and not just say everything they say is bullshit, because I don't think we make progress. And one of the sad things I find about the community is that it's like the comparison I gave to Roger and I gave to other people. It's like football teams. Both are in one camp, and you support this team, you support that team, and everything you say I'm going to disagree with, and everything you say, and almost like politics, Republicans and Democrats, doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. He can do the worst things. People are still going to vote for him. And I find that is counterproductive to anyone making progress.
But what matters for Bitcoin is the software, right? So Bitcoin and Bitcoin Core Client attracts a lot of developers, right? In the last few months, there's been a huge spike in people contributing code. So ultimately, if you have this digital gold that is powered by software, you want software developers, right? And I think most software engineers, cryptographers, mathematicians, everything, they all gravitate towards Bitcoin, not towards Bcash.
Yeah, I understand.
So you can debate everything on any forum, anywhere in the world, but ultimately, who's building it? And that's what's more interesting, I think. Yeah,
okay. So, and that is interesting. And the next thing, the next point I was moving on to the scaling, which one of the things is I also find disappointing in trying to look at both sides, so when I've been reading up on the Lightning Network, it feels to me that for the Lightning Network to scale, there will inevitably have to be an increase in the block size at some point anyway. From everything I've read, depending on the size. But eventually, if enough people are using Lightning Network, there will be enough transactions going onto the main chain that still will have to scale at some point. I think it's a shame that there wasn't an increase in the block. If it's inevitable, there wasn't an increase in the block size in the short term to alleviate pressure on the network, because I think, again, one thing I felt sorry for Roger is he did a lot of work to promote Bitcoin and to get retailers to accept it. And then retailers had to stop accepting it and then had to start looking at altcoins. I look at OpenBazaar with Brian Hoffman. I look at, as I said, Ryan X. Charles, who I've spoken to. Do you not see it as a backward step that some retailers now can't use Bitcoin?
Well, the thing is, you could always use Bitcoin, right? The way it's working perfectly. When there is high demand, the fees will go up, right? And when demand is down, the fees will come down. The issue more is that it is an open permissionless network. So people can come in and they can game the fees. And I think the huge spike towards the end of 2017 was some group gaming the fees. And some of the analysis done by some people in the space did show that it is being gamed and pushed up. And to really understand it, you have to look at, there's different incentives for different groups, right? If you're a miner, then you want the fees to go up.
Of course.
That's why it's kind of ironic that some of the miners are saying we need the bigger block size, because that actually cuts into their revenues, right? But those fees definitely made a lot of mining pools very rich in that period, because it was just ridiculous how much money was being taken off for fees. But there's no guarantee that fees can stay low in this kind of a system. That's why Lightning will help us get towards that circular economy, because the fees will stay low for Lightning and predictable. And without that predictability, no merchant can really accept it, right? The way it works now is that any blockchain that is, transactions are paid for by fees, they will get expensive when there is usage. It's just simple supply and demand, right? Unless you keep on increasing the block size. But then it's not a really decentralized chain, because if someone's in control of it, they can say, okay, on this day, we're going to go to 32. Then you're just along for the ride, right? At least with Bitcoin, we know it's decentralized. No one can force a change through. So the NYA2X thing was kind of a pivotal moment for Bitcoin, because it showed that, a group of companies can't force change on the system.
Which was great.
Yeah, which is great. If you want an asset that no one can mess with, then that's what you want, right? That nobody can force a change through. But if you can keep increasing the block size to alleviate that pressure on the fees, then they can do anything. So your advice then to a Brian Hoffman or to a Ryan Charles, would that be you need to wait for Lightning Network? Well, you can contribute to Lightning Network, or you can do other things like promote certain businesses to batch transactions. A lot of exchanges were not batching transactions.
No, I mean in reference to their present issues. So say if you have a website that's selling things for anything from $1 to $50, Bitcoin is unusable for you if probably the cost of the transaction is over 5% of the item that's being bought.
Yeah.
So if you're selling dollar items and the fees are dollars, it's a waste of time. And if you're selling even $100 items at $30 fee, it's a waste of time. But they're facing real issues that they've built parts of their business on it, accepting crypto.
Right. I think a lot of businesses built themselves up around Bitcoin as a payments network, and Bitcoin is not a payments network, right? If it was a payments network, we wouldn't have to wait 10 minutes for confirmations, right? We wouldn't have a fee market that can go up and down. But the fees right now are very low. I need to say that again, because people still say the fees are high. The fees right now are very low. If you're trying to do a micro payment,
20 cents?
Yeah, it's like 20 cents to $1, depending on the day, right? But the fees are like the weather. Some days it's going to be sunny. Some days there's going to be rain. You can't predict the weather perfectly,
of course,
right? And you have to accept that some days there will be rain, right? Sometimes the fees will be high based on usage, but that's just supply and demand. If you want to alleviate that, then you'll have to have a dynamic block size or something like that, or just increase it all the time.
And is a dynamic block size something that is possible and has been looked at?
That's also not a good idea, because that can also be gamed, right? Anybody can come into the network and do something to adjust the fees.
So I'm still at that point though, with kind of Brian and Ryan still thinking they have a business that was built on something that did appear to be a payment network sold to them in the belief that it was, I doubt the digital gold name existed as much then. They still have to make a choice. I don't think they're just going to close their businesses down and give up because there are alternatives out there. So what would your advice to them be? Because it seems like they have three choices. Accept the variable fees, and your customers accept it. Wait for Lightning, which we still don't know when it'll be fully usable, or use an alternative currency.
They can really do whatever they want. They built their businesses and they have to take responsibility for building on Bitcoin as it is, not as they think it might be or understand it to be, right? So if they misunderstood the design of the system and thought this is for payments and, fees are always going to be low, then, I can't really help you. So you can do many things. You can build Lightning, right? I don't know if they have the capabilities to contribute. They can take an altcoin, or they can wait, or they can, lobby and try to affect change that can benefit them, right? So one reason for the fees getting blown up was that a lot of businesses and exchanges were not batching transactions. Once they started batching, that just reduces the backlog in the network, right? But I think what it comes down to is they weren't prescient enough to look at the system as a whole and understand how it works at scale. So if you take this as an example, it's like, I can trade you little tiny leaves of gold to pay for something, right? And that might work really well for small amounts. But let's say everyone is using that and people start moving a lot of gold around. Well, those little leaves of gold are going to become big blocks of gold. And that's going to be heavy and hard to transport. But that's the reality of the system, because that's the property of gold. It is quite dense and quite heavy. And you can't complain and say, yeah, the gold's too heavy now, because you didn't understand it was heavy when it was a little leaf of gold.
Right. So this is where we have competing altcoins and different use cases. So this is probably why Bitcoin Cash has a use case at the moment, because they are selling it as a payment system.
So is Litecoin.
Well, yeah, no, but I'm not disagreeing with that as well. What I'm saying is, but this is just a fundamental disagreement about what it is.
But here's the thing: Ripple is billed as payments too, right? And because they're somewhat centralized, they're actually cheaper and faster.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I personally wouldn't build anything on Ripple.
Nor would I. So you see, there are trade-offs. This is the one thing about all these systems and this whole debate about scale.
Well, it's like protocols, right, as well, like EOS to Ethereum.
Yeah. But I was talking to someone, he wanted to actually use a blockchain for a payments platform. And I just told him, don't use a blockchain because you'll never achieve the scale you want, where people are buying things for $1 or $2 and there's like millions of them. It just won't work. So find some other model. But a blockchain is not a really good way to build a payment system. So the Bitcoin Cash team aren't going to stop. Their product's not going to go away. They are going to build it until it's a success or it's a proven failure or nobody uses it. Therefore, I guess it is a competitor to Lightning Network. And by the time Lightning Network is fully ready for retail adoption, it will have to see, alongside Litecoin, it will be seen as a competitor product. Sure. So they're welcome to compete. You know? Like that. There's nothing wrong. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the Bcash chain. It's just how it's being presented to people and marketed to people, right? It's kind of dishonest when Litecoin has faster confirmations that they say, we're for payments. You have something built for payments, built as a payment solution that has 10-minute block times, and something built for payments with 2.5-minute block times, right? I think it's a bit misleading to say this thing that takes 10 minutes is better for payments, right? And now they're kind of marketing zero confirmation transactions, like unconfirmed transactions, as safe. And it's really not. Yeah,
I get the Litecoin comparison. I mean, but Audi are going to market their cars as better than BMW. I mean, that happens. Everyone does that.
Well, Litecoin will market as payments, and they will market for payments, and people will use whatever they like.
So I'm just guessing they kind of have a head start on Lightning Network in terms of going for retailers, and retailers will have to just make a choice when Lightning Network's available.
Yeah, they might manage to scam some people that haven't done their research, right?
Can you empathize with anything they're doing? Those pauses I won't edit out, because if you can't, that's fine. But I always think it's good to just try and...
I can't really think of one really nice thing that they're doing.
And so the issue... I struggled with the zero confirmations, the marketing of this. I know with Bitcoin you tend to find it's 6, but some places actually accept 2 confirmations. What is the justification for 0 confirmations? How are they explaining that?
They're just saying it's a verified transaction or something. It's just marketing. It's the same thing under the hood. It's still an unconfirmed transaction.
Okay. Right. So I think it's probably a good time now to talk a little bit about Lightning Network.
Sure.
I've got a bunch of questions. I've spent the last couple of days looking at it again. I've looked at it before. I'm looking at it again. One of the things that was very misleading for me is when you look at the YouTube videos, it sounds really complicated. And what I realized is those videos are explaining it under the hood. Mm-hmm. When it was all explained, I was a bit worried for users that this would be overly complicated. But again, I think it's a good time for maybe you to explain what Lightning Network is, why it's important, and how it works.
Sure, I'll try my best.
Yeah.
I'm not the protocol expert, but
don't worry. And I'm gonna speak to Jameson later in the week and get him to go in detail.
Okay. So Lightning is essentially a payment channel, and it's a network of payment channels. So if I open up a channel with you, it's like we open up a tube, and then we either fund the tube with some, let's say, liquid for this example, right? We can kind of push that liquid through the tube back and forth. Or I can open up a channel with you, and only I have liquid in the tube, and I can push it to you. So you actually don't need Bitcoin to receive Bitcoin over Lightning. But it's a layer 2 solution, so it's not on-chain. The premise is that not every transaction needs to be recorded in a blockchain. So with the blockchain, you're expending a lot of electricity, a lot of energy, resources to mine it, secure it, and that's actually quite valuable. So transactions on-chain should be, things that you need to be very secure and maybe for larger amounts. But for Lightning, you'd use that as your spending, as your wallet, basically. The amount you would keep in your wallet would be the amount you put in a channel. So you just spend freely, and it doesn't need to be written to the chain because not everything needs to be written on a chain. And by that way, we can scale because you can open channels with everybody, and you don't need to know the content, capacity, and details of everyone on the network and every channel. Okay.
It seems to me that it's taken a long time. It's obviously hugely complex, and it's just a big project. When do you think it will get to the point where it will be usable without fear? Because everything I've seen it usable, every use case at the moment is saying, it's like investing. Don't spend any money you can't afford to lose because we're still, in beta. How long do you think that process, what's the estimate on that?
I think it's still very early. We've been in beta for a few of the clients for maybe 5 weeks.
Okay.
So it's still very, very early days, maybe 6 weeks now. But I think...
And it's on the Blockstream website?
We have an implementation, yeah. It's in the Elements project.
Okay.
It's C Lightning. And then there's Async and Lightning Labs, LND. But it's still very early days. Like, people are still coming out with wallets. The whole UX aspect of it is still very much under development. But I think we'll start seeing some serious use by end of year by early adopters. And then I think next year it'll probably blow up a lot.
Okay. What are in these early 5 weeks, what are the key challenges you're coming up against?
Well, for us, we're still not in beta. So C Lightning is still alpha stage. We're just bug fixing, stabilizing, and working out compatibility with the other implementations right now.
Okay. What are the biggest challenges for Lightning itself?
I think it's probably going to be UX. Once we've nailed down everything on the protocol level and interoperability, then it's just making a simple, easy-to-use experience, like for the average person. So if you have like a SPV wallet on your phone, right? That's for Bitcoin. It's pretty easy to use, right? But it took us a long time to get here, actually, years.
Right.
So it's going to take Lightning time too. But there are a lot of talented guys working on it. You have Jack Mahler's out there on Zap and a whole bunch of other wallets out there. Async has a mobile wallet, and I saw like 2 other ones coming out on iOS.
Okay.
we'll probably get Lightning into green address too. So, it's all coming. And I think everyone is very motivated to deliver on this experience to people because of the whole drama, So, there's a saying, cypherpunks write code.
Yeah.
When there's all this like BS and people are spreading lies, then coders are going to code and they're going to build stuff.
Okay.
And that's what we're seeing.
So I'm going to talk through what I've looked at and the questions I have and the concerns I have. And tell me if I've misunderstood it, I've got something wrong. So if I first want to use Lightning Network, I go into a tea shop and want to get a cup of tea, and they ask me to pay, and I go to pay with Lightning. Will the channel open up automatically without me even having to know I'm opening a channel? Or will the first time I transact with a tea shop, will something have to happen that's different?
So if you have a channel open already and there's adequate capacity in the network, then you should be able to just pay them, even if you're not directly connected to them. But if you have no channel, like say you just download the wallet, then you'll probably open up a channel directly to them, and then you just pay them directly.
So at the point of opening up a channel, I'm trying to imagine the use scenario. Am I still just going to point and that all just happens under the hood and I don't even know about it?
Yes.
Or I'm going to have to is there almost part of the UX is open your first channel?
Yes, there'll probably be that eventually, right? And then once you have a channel open, it's just like, can you find a route? And if not, then they might say, would you like to open up a channel directly to the person you're paying?
Okay. So that kind of user experience already sounds like something which is going to be far too complicated for some people who are just used to go tap card.
Yeah, but if you just download a Bitcoin wallet on your phone, you still need to get Bitcoin into it somehow.
Of course, yeah.
That's difficult too, actually. Like the whole user experience to get Bitcoin onto your phone is not that straightforward. You have to buy it on an exchange or something and then send it to an address. Yeah. And you actually have to copy and paste addresses and, that's how you get the Bitcoin into your phone. So it's the same idea. You'd have to be able to get a channel open first before you can transact. Just like you have to get Bitcoin into a Bitcoin wallet.
So it's almost like we don't really know what the user experience is going to be yet until we do it.
Well, there are user experiences now, but how it will evolve over months and years, we don't know yet.
And from what I'm reading, routing is something that hasn't been figured out yet, or
routing is figured out. It's the channel capacity that's an issue right now because a lot of people are just testing. They peg in maybe a few dollars or $10, and if you want to do a bigger purchase, like we had things on sale on the Blockstream website. Like t-shirts and hoodies, and those are like $15, $20 and $40, then you might fail in routing. So a lot of people have to open up a channel directly to us, but we're trying to open fat channels or bigger channels with some of the larger nodes on the network, like Bitrefill and TorGuard. So
if the routing fails, is the Bitcoin lost?
No.
Oh, it's not. So it's just
say cannot found a route.
It can't. Okay, fine. So therefore, I come to a couple of next points. Is that one of the things I read about is that your Lightning wallet will have to have your private keys exposed to the internet, which is not something we told to protect our private keys in Bitcoin world, yet they may exist. Help me out here when I get this wrong. They may exist within one of the nodes.
No, it would just be on your side.
Yours, okay.
So you already have your private key if you have like a SPV wallet, right? It's in here. It's just as it's accessible. And I think there are some wallets where your private keys are like in plain text, not encrypted on the device too. So it's the same thing. You have to have your key in your wallet, right? Just
right. But what if your wallet goes offline, yet you still got the channel open? How does it close the payment without your private key?
If you go offline, then you cannot receive a payment. And then you will send the payment when you are online with your wallet.
Right. Okay. So, and then I put it out there, and Jameson was commented on this, and he said, consider this like the wallet in your pocket. Don't care about more than you'd want to lose. Exactly. So it's probably going to be like a couple $100 for most people.
Yeah.
So then the scenario I'm imagining is, say I'm going on a shopping trip. I've used it. Suddenly I get to another shop, and I've used up my $200, I'm going to have to transfer back from my mainchain wallet, which therefore means I'm going to have to use the mainchain. and therefore I'm going to have to wait for that confirmation time.
Yes and no. So right now, you could do that if you have Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
But if we have that circular economy, you might be earning Bitcoin over Lightning too. And down the road, I don't want to say when, but down the road, there will be Lightning ATMs where you just top up. You put in some cash, and then they'll open a channel and push funds to you. Or you could go onto an exchange. This is another thing that's probably coming down the road, where you can withdraw on the exchange to your Lightning wallet. Or a mining pool might pay out over Lightning too. So instead of waiting for that one mining pool payout a day, you just get it as they mine.
So there could be some people who exist only in Lightning Network and never come out.
Yep.
But also, if you were getting paid on the Lightning Network, you can end up having too much in your wallet that's too high risk, and then you're going to have to transfer back to the main chain.
Yes.
So there are going to be a lot of people who are going to have that a relationship between the main chain and their Lightning wallet.
But you would maybe manage that the same way you manage Bitcoin. So if you have a mobile wallet on your phone, you might put $100 of Bitcoin here, and on your home computer, on an offline device, you put more, right? And then you put more in your safe or something like that. So you could have a Lightning wallet that's online in your house if you're a business or wherever, and then you collect most of the payments there. But on your mobile wallet, you just keep $100. Right. And if you finish using this up, then you'd go and transfer from your other Lightning wallet to this one.
So, say Lightning Network is hugely successful. It's going to have a lot of interactions with the main chain still.
Yes, it should.
Therefore, the main chain could start filling up. Say the main chain starts filling up. What area kind of fees do you start to find? Do you think it would be concerning, and there would be consideration of block size increase, or does that not come into play? So, for example, say it's so hugely successful, main chain fees are back to $30, $40. Would that be a concern, and therefore a time where a block size increase would be needed?
Maybe if we have some good way to bring about a block size increase without splitting into multiple coins. I think that's what people are most worried about, right? Like when Monero hard forked to change their proof of work algorithm, then you had like 5 Moneros coming up, right? And they're mostly scammy.
Yeah. And most people ignored them. But I'm asking, say that it can be done. What do you think are like an ideal prices for the main chain for a transaction?
It's not really about the price. It's more about being able to do it, right? I think first we have to do the research and be able to do it. The biggest issue is that we haven't been investing on a lot of that research into how we can actually do a hard fork safely. And there's been research by Johnson Lau, it's called SpoonNet. But since the scaling debate ended, I don't think he's been working on that, and no one's been pushing a lot on that research. But I do think we have a fair ways to go before we see that kind of fees being gamed like that. So a lot of the reason why the fees could be gamed was because there wasn't SegWit. So you could actually create a lot of outputs and pump up the price like that, pump up the fee price. But now with SegWit, it's much more costlier to do that same thing. That's why we haven't seen that spam and manipulation of the fees happening. Also, we do have more block space now. More exchanges are batching transactions. It could be years before we need to worry about very high fees.
And of course it could be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still think it's a healthy thing to discuss because if and when it does happen, it will be an issue. And I'm trying to understand, from someone in your position, what you think a healthy or unhealthy main chain fee is. Because I have the following questions.
Yeah. I really don't have an answer for that. If it's either you believe in the free market or you believe in socialism, right? Because to increase to keep the fees at the right level is really just deciding a market price, and that's not free market, right? You're deciding there's a right price for a fee, but if demand is massive, then the fees have to go up, and the fees do have to go up in the end because the subsidy will keep on decreasing. So there should be an expectation of fees to go up because in a year plus, we'll see another halving.
Yep.
And there will be less incentive for miners to mine.
Yep.
So they'll have to earn through fees, right? So fees do need to go up. And I don't know. I don't really have an answer of what the right fee is. And that's kind of like, what is the right block size, right?
Well, I mean, the reason I ask, I heard Jameson's interview alongside Roger, actually, where he was saying high fees are important to reward miners. And I guess what my personal concern is then, yes, we have a free market and free market pricing, but at a certain price, I think I read, say main chain fees were $10, that prices out a certain significant percentage of the population. I might even have it written down here. A certain percentage. Anyway. And then at $100 main chain fees, it prices out almost everyone. And then Bitcoin then starts to become a tool for that prices out. And it can end up pricing out people who maybe need it most. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the actual real world use case at the moment, as I mentioned, I met Alejandro from Venezuela. It's an actual use case there for people where Bitcoin is stopping people lose money. It's allowing people to survive. It's a real world use case. Mm-hmm. Main chain fees of £100 would kill that use case. And I personally, I don't know, I find that a little bit kind of concerning. But that then will push people back towards Bitcoin Cash, whose argument is it is for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're pricing fees in dollars, right? But fees are actually measured in Satoshis per byte.
Of course.
So you can't really, if you want cheap fees, then the price of Bitcoin will be low, right? Like the reason why fees are expensive was because Bitcoin price is also spiking at the same time. So you're measuring the Satoshis per byte, which is also increasing because of the gaming of the system. But you're measuring like two increases. One is the Satoshi per byte cost and the price of Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. If the price of Bitcoin is always low, then the fee price will be low too, right? It's just part and parcel of how the system works. When the price of a Bitcoin or the asset goes up, then it's inevitable the cost to transact it will also go up. It's like going back to the gold example. If the only way you could FedEx gold bars around was to use a little bit of gold, like let's say, an ounce of gold, then if gold price doubled, then the cost to FedEx that gold would double too, even if the price is still 1 ounce, right? It's just part and parcel of the design. And that's why Lightning Network is important, because that is what's going to let everyone in the world use it, because the fees to transact it will always be low.
Yes, but it still feels like the main chain is a preserve of the preserve for the wealthy, and will actually end up centralizing use of the main chain to those who can afford it, which could be a quite limited number of people.
Well, are you familiar with the concept of demurrage?
No.
It's the cost to store gold.
Right.
There's a term just for that. So to store gold is actually expensive because you have to put it in a vault. The vault needs a guard, and you have to make sure that you have security cameras and everything, and that's all the cost of storing gold. So if you think about it, transacting on the main chain is expensive because you're paying for security. As a miner yourself, you would stop mining at a certain point if no one was paying you to mine, right? If the revenue you're able to generate from mining dropped below a certain point, you wouldn't mine it. And then you would lose security for the main chain because, it's not much hash rate. It can be attacked. And that's bad, right? So the block subsidy is probably a reason why people think it should be cheap. But it should not be cheap because the subsidy is paying miners, instead of the fees, which will replace that eventually.
So it feels like, therefore, the Lightning Network becomes the next level of what Bitcoin is then for everyone. Because for the majority of people to be able to use Bitcoin in the world, if we see it as a global thing, the majority of them are going to be on Lightning Network and not touch the main chain. I don't even know how to process that and think about that.
Well, there's another way to think about it.
Yeah.
So it's like priority mail. If I want to overnight something to you, it's going to cost $100. Mm-hmm. But if I send it by snail mail, it might cost me, a couple dollars. It's the same idea. Like, this all comes down to people thinking Bitcoin is for payments only, right? And it's the first and foremost use case. And by that use case, you have to be in the next block. You want to pay the highest fee to confirm. But if you lowball the fees, which you can do, you can send a payment for a few cents right now, like right this moment. And it'll get confirmed when it gets confirmed. It could be 6 hours, it could be a day. But if you're not in a rush, that's okay, right? So you could be someone in Venezuela and you want to make a main chain confirmation, a main chain transaction, and you can just pay, $1 or a few cents and wait for it to confirm.
I guess, therefore, what my worry is that contradicts with the idea that you should only keep a certain amount in your hot wallet that you're willing to lose. You've got no second option. You can't put it back. So say we get to a stage where, I don't know, say main chain fees, just say for the sake of argument, are $100. Because everything's usually successful. And say you're based out of Venezuela and you're earning $500 a month and you want to save $100. You're going to have to keep most of this in a hot wallet because you can't really afford to put it back on the main chain and then take it back off, because each time you do it, it's going to cost you $100 to put it on, $100 to put it off. So having more money is going to give you more security. There's no cold storage option for Lightning.
Not yet, but you can ask Jameson about that.
Yeah, okay, but then hopefully there will be. But you can see some of my concerns here.
Yeah.
We're creating tiers and services which are, I don't know, like Bitcoin felt like a libertarian idea, something for everyone, and now it's because of its own success needs new technology, but the new technology is therefore partitioning who can use which bits of it based on wealth.
Yeah, unless you're a communist, right? So what is being asked for is that everyone has access to overnight priority mail, right? For anything they want. And it must be very cheap. It's not feasible, right? The technology doesn't support that unless you make certain trade-offs, which is centralizing it, right? If it's a centralized system, yes, we can set the fees at a perfect amount and it's going to be cheap for everybody in the world. But that's a centralized system. And then it can be censored, right? And this is where censorship really matters. Censorship of what you can or cannot do. So if it's a centralized system, then we go back to fiat, which is it's controlled by several large parties who can say, yeah, you can't transact, right? I think BitPay is going to prevent people from X-rated sites from accepting payments, right?
BitPay is going to do that.
I heard. I read it. I saw it on my feed. But
what do you think about that? Just while we're in there,
they can do whatever they want, right? But that's the thing. Like, it's a private business, and they can censor your transactions. And if we try to build a system that is controlled by 5 entities, and those 5 entities can censor your transaction, that's a worse trade-off than having the fee market and having Lightning and other things. The question is, why do we expend so much energy on proof of work to have this system that is outside of anyone's control? That's the question you have to ask yourself, right? Yeah,
no, I get it. I get it. But again, I think therefore this pushes back to even more so than Litecoin into the Bitcoin Cash. One of the key Bitcoin Cash arguments, in that there is a desire to create something for everyone, and in some ways even more so for the developing world than the developed world, because there is more of a need for it. I mean, you and I don't need Bitcoin. If we didn't have Bitcoin today, we don't need censorship-resistant payments. We don't really. If Bitcoin didn't exist for you and I tomorrow, we'd still book our hotel rooms and our flights and our holidays, buy our cars, and we'd live our life. What we might get with Bitcoin is something that's a bit more fun and a bit more convenient, maybe slightly lower fees. But I don't think either of us are low income either. So actually, when I look at the crypto use cases, I actually see the biggest use cases in the countries with the faltering economies, with hyperinflation. There's an actual use case there, but we're potentially building a system which they can't afford to use. And that's why I think when I try and say to people, I try and be as impartial as possible, and I try and see the Bitcoin Cash argument. And the two arguments I come back to is they're at least designing something which retailers can use. Okay, it's digital cash over digital gold. but they are also creating something that is better for the developing world.
Maybe. But you see,
was that a slight
system,
concession there?
The system doesn't scale. Like eventually, if everyone in let's say Venezuela wanted to use Vcash, the fees would go up, right? And then what are they going to do? Keep hard forking to increase the block size, or what? That's why I see Lightning as a solution, because it's actually cheaper to transact, and you might commit it to the main chain, once a month or every few months, right? If you wanted to cash out something, but it's still safe to use. It's cheap to use.
I think with both Bitcoin Cash and with Lightning, we can't foresee the different problems they may come into in 3 years' time. Mm-hmm. They're going to be different problems, but both are going to face challenges and problems continually, and both are going to probably look at find solutions. I don't know what they'll be. Most likely the Bitcoin Cash one will be more centralized. Although saying that, even with Bitcoin, so there was one article I read by, are you aware of the article by Manny Rosenfeld?
I know who he is, but I don't know if I read that article.
So he did a thing where he was looking at, crazy scenario, but just say everybody in the world uses it and they do 10 transactions a year. Mm-hmm. By his calculation, you would need 440 megabyte blocks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so at some point, Bitcoin would have to scale for that. If it happens, if it does, those blocks are that's going to end up being centralized anyway, right?
Okay, so if you want to build something for Venezuela, they could make a side chain, right? You would peg in some Bitcoin, and then you could set fees to zero on that chain.
I want to talk about peg side chains actually in a moment.
Okay,
because that is something I did read about and found quite interesting. But I'm just saying, the point being is that if I then go full circle, and I'm kind of writing something at the moment about the importance of impartiality, the tribalism within Bitcoin, I think, stops us really objectively looking at fair arguments either side. And I think there is a better use case for cryptocurrencies for the developing world than there is for the developed world. Yeah, it feels like we're building it for the developed world who don't need it.
I disagree with that. I think Lightning will be beneficial. Like, the goal of Bitcoin is to have a global currency, right? Mm-hmm. And a global currency includes everyone. So you do need Lightning with near zero fees for the developing world. But
then it comes back to my point. If it's a global currency and it is for everyone, the level of security that you have and will be dependent on how wealthy you are. It's not a equal system. I don't think
it's dependent on how wealthy you are. It's just how much you're willing to pay, right? Like I said, you could lowball.
Yeah, but that's the same. That's exactly the same question. It's the same answer.
Right. But that's solving a much bigger problem than a digital currency can solve, right? You're solving inequity.
Yeah, but why can't the starting point be to create a system that's equal for all?
I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, but this is my point being, it's like, I don't think the starting point for this is, hold on, how do we make this fair for everyone? At the moment, we're saying we're a free market. If you've got the money, you can get it.
The answer is to, I don't know, go full socialist. I mean, issue a coin and give a million coins to everyone in the world.
Well,
right?
that won't work. That won't work.
Yeah,
but that
doesn't have any value, right?
It's
a very difficult problem to solve, and I don't think working back from that to create a digital currency, is the right way. We have Bitcoin already. It's recognized as a store of value. It's the reserve currency of all digital currencies. You can't really peg it into you can't put this round peg into this square hole of solving inequality, because it's already there. It has value. So the best thing to do is make that value accessible to as many people as we can.
Yeah, but I guess what I worry about therefore is the people who are building these technologies and the companies they have a financial incentive for it to be built in the way that. So Blockstream, I'm not saying there is any conspiracy, but it's better for Blockstream that there are small blocks because of the technologies that are being developed.
Not really.
Well, if you're working on side chains and peg side chains, then, and you're looking to monetize them, you would monetize better from smaller blocks. And I'm not saying
really.
it's good. Is it?
Not really.
Well, okay.
See,
it feels like
a sidechain can have different properties. It's not just about transactions. A lot of people get hung up on transactions per second, but it's not very interesting for a blockchain. For a blockchain, I think it's more interesting about value transacted per second. So Bitcoin can transact tens of thousands of dollars a second. Nothing else can come close to that. There's a global pool of liquidity. There's network effects in place. A lot of people have Bitcoin wallets. There's a whole ecosystem, and there's a lot of developers that are maintaining security on the software side, and there's a lot of miners that are maintaining security on the mining side.
But the people, the key people I've bumped into today and who I meet they are going to be able to afford to use the main chain, and this isn't a problem for them. And I think this is where I'm saying I see an argument for Bitcoin Cash. As much as we don't want to like what they're doing, as much as we don't like them co-opting the brand, which I don't, all these things I don't like, but they are creating something that is designed so people in developed countries can have the same security over their money as people in the developed world. And you don't see that argument
I don't see that. I think it's just virtue signaling, right? They like to say we're solving everything for people in South America or wherever, but they're onboarding them into a centralized system. Most of the nodes for Bcash are in China, right? Is that good for the economic future of that country? I don't know. But it is a far more centralized system. If I wanted people to onboard into something, I would say get into Litecoin. At least there's no pre-mine. It's more decentralized, and they're not going to force changes through arbitrarily, right?
I think it's a real shame that if any attempt is if we find fault in every attempt and everything that somebody else does, because I think that's where the tribalism comes from, because then that happens both sides. Everything that you do is bad. Everything Blockstream does is bad. Everything Core does is bad from the Bitcoin Cash side. Everything Bitcoin Cash does is bad from the small block. It's, and then we just don't get anywhere. And this is why I'm always trying to find the middle ground and look at both. And I don't. The one thing I kept coming back to in my notes is that and I know it's getting to the socialist argument, but Bitcoin felt like a fair, open, censorship-resistant, permissionless system for everyone. But now, actually, it's kind of like, well, depends how much money you've got.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If people that get in earlier are going to be an advantage, right?
Well, you're not going to get in early if you live in a Ugandan village that's only just got mobile phone coverage. You've missed out.
Yeah, but that's not something that technology can solve, I think. So everyone is trying to solve the technology. If you look at... I think the criticism is probably better directed at a lot of people in the blockchain industry, right? They're raising tons of money and they're making these platforms. But I don't think they're really trying to solve that issue you're solving, which is to make something that's accessible by everybody, right? Whereas the people working on Lightning, we've had people working on Lightning since 2015. Mm-hmm. Lightning Labs has been working on it, and they haven't raised exorbitant amounts of money. Async is working on Lightning. A lot of people, the engineers on these teams could easily jump ship or do their own token or something and make a ton of money, but they're not doing that. They're working on Lightning.
Right. Okay. We've done a lot of time actually here. So the only other things that I came up with on Lightning, a couple of questions I had. At the point where so a whole bunch of transactions happen in Lightning Network and the fees are charged at that time. When the channel closes and it goes to close out on the main chain, how does it know what fees it needs to reserve in the future when it closes?
I think there's a fee estimator.
Okay. Is there a risk, therefore, I don't know, say a store does a whole bunch of transactions and when they go to close the channel, say there's a spike in fees, that they end up paying a lot more than they would expect?
There's a possibility, but I think that's why a lot of people are working on improving fee estimation right now.
How long can the channel stay open for?
I think it's indefinite, unless
right, okay.
I think it's indefinite.
Right. So if there's volatility around the main chain, I guess that's a risk to retailers for their profit margins at the end of the month. Okay. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
As I learn, I'm hoping other people learn from me because, I learn in every one of these interviews I do. Can you just let me know what's coming up for you, what's coming up for Blockstream, how people can find you, whether you want to hear from people, and if you do, what you want to hear from them about?
Sure. Well, they can find me on Twitter. My handle's @Excellion.
What is that, by the way?
It's just my game name when I was playing games. What Blockstream's working on, we have lots of stuff happening all the time. We'll be launching the Liquid Network soon. We have global coverage of Blockstream Satellite coming down the pipe. And hopefully Sea Lightning will be in beta soon as well. But there's a lot of exciting developments happening.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you enjoyed Consensus. Thank you for your time.
Okay,
hopefully we'll do this again sometime in the future.
For sure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, so what did you make of that? Feel free to get in touch and let me know your feedback. There is a Facebook page you can also put questions on, and you can also go onto the webpage on the website at www.whatbitcoindid.com and leave comments under the podcast episode on the podcast page. Reflection, listen to it. I do like the thought of Lightning Network. I do appreciate what's trying to be done, but I do have these concerns. I don't want to be a socialist. I understand, especially as some people keep telling me on Twitter how bad socialism is, and from the things I've read and my interview at Alejandro, I do understand that. But I do think it's a shame that the main chain of Bitcoin might be something that's reserved to people who can afford it, and everyone else will be on the side chains. And it feels like at present the side chains don't or won't have the same kind of cold wallet technology that the main chain does. And maybe this will change, or maybe I've misunderstood it. And look, if I have misunderstood it, feel free to get in touch and let me know. I mean, I always say I'm not a techie, just trying to understand this technology. But yeah, though that's the main concern I have with Lightning. But yeah, it seems exciting. So yeah, couple more interviews coming up. I've recorded one with Jameson Lopp while I was out in New York, and I also recorded with the CEO of Polymath, Trevor, which was a pretty cool one. And I also have the Alejandro one I still need to release. Bunch more being booked, so as and when I have them, I will let you know. Please do support the show. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. It only takes a few minutes. It makes a big difference, so please do that if you have the time. Please do follow me on social media and share the show, and always feel free to get in touch. I will always do my best to get back to you. Okay, I hope you all have a great weekend and see you soon.